Are there any spiritual dangers or enemies to board gaming? And if so, what are they? On today's episode of Board Game Faith, the bi-weekly podcast exploring the intersection of board games, religion, and spirituality. Today we are opening the door on a brand new kind of episode here at Board Game Faith AV Club, where we consider, we're taking a look at a video online and entering into some conversation with it. Before we get to that, though, my name is Daniel Hilty.
My name is Kevin Taylor.
And Kevin, I am so grateful to get to be back with you. We skipped the last episode because of holidays here in our corner of the world. And I got to say, Kevin, I missed getting to record an episode with you.
I missed you too, Daniel. Yeah. Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good.
Good.
Yeah.
We actually, as some of our listeners may know, we actually got to see each other, even though we didn't record an episode. You drove 5,000 miles to...
Wasn't quite that far.
Wasn't quite that far. But it was almost 1,000.
Maybe in metric. I think in the metric, which are called nanometers, I think.
I think it was... I think... Yeah, I think by scientific notation, it was 9.7 times 10 to the 23rd. I think that you... It was the number of atoms in a mole of sodium chloride. Yeah. Anyway,
and that mole of sodium chloride is safely in the University of Paris in a museum as a basis for metric studies.
That was. I think we're delving into a deep cut of chemistry nerdiness here, but hopefully. But yeah, it was so awesome and kind of you, Kevin, to come visit our family. And it was quite a drive for you. It was a couple-day drive.
It was a good adventure for me. So I needed it. So thank you. You guys are great hosts and got to see some of the country and see your home. And I got to see Ark Nova. That was really awesome.
It was so fun getting to play Ark Nova with you. Yeah.
And Glenmore 4?
2. Glenmore 2. Glenmore 2, not quite as good as Glenmore 4. Glenmore 4 isn't out. I don't know if it's on the horizon, but when it comes out, I'm sure it'll be better than Glenmore 2. But
yes.
But that was fun. And you beat me at Glenmore 2, even though it was your first game, and I played it many times. The awesomeness of Kevin Taylor shone through.
I think I unintentionally cheated, probably. That's the only way, because I never win. And it's okay.
No.
I highlight the experience.
Well, and I know we also missed getting to hang out with our listeners too. We missed getting to talk with you, our listeners, and getting to hear from you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. There's that tuning inward again, Kevin, that I need to find a better word for. But thanks for punching the button, clicking the button to listen. We missed hanging out with you, our listeners, and we hope that the last few weeks have been good for you too. We've heard from some of you online or through our newsletter or through social media. So thanks for reaching out. And for those of you, whether we heard from you or not, we just hope the last few weeks have been good and that you got to spend it with folks you love and who love you, and that it's been a good time.
Mm-hmm. So. That's right. And today, in celebration of a holiday that is somewhat international, which is Christmas. International in the sense of there's all these cultural things, like the country of Turkey likes Christmas and so does Japan, so it's not always a religious holiday is what we're getting at. So it has this cultural component, and we thought we'd do something fun with that. And many people know the story of A Christmas Carol, penned by Charles Dickens. And he also innovated the metric system, I believe. The metric system favors highly.
Little known fact. Yeah, except it was base 12 when he first developed it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Keep going.
And
sorry.
He created some characters like Scrooge, and we thought we would do a skit, Daniel. And this skit, we thought we would set A Christmas Carol with Bob Dylan type characters. So the setting is 1950s. 60s New York City singer-songwriter, bar dives, musician culture. And Scrooge is bit of a man whose life has passed him by, and he needs a visit from a kindly beatnik ghost. Does that sound fair?
I love it, Kevin. This was Kevin's fantastic idea, and I love it. Thank you, Kevin. And as always, as our listeners, longtime listeners may know, we have to culminate this in a clap, and the clap will
Right.
Cue our theme music, and we'll officially get started. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
If you want the meaty part of the show, you'll want to skip about 8 minutes. But
I'm sorry.
this is how we warm up. This is the prelude.
That's right. That's right. This is our silliness. Although we get pretty silly in the other part too. So a disgruntled Scrooge-like rocker whose life has passed him by. Is that that's kind of where
December
how we're starting,
24th,
right?
another year, Christmas Eve. He's playing to a small crowd, gathered maybe 12 people or so, in this
Okay.
obscure East End bar.
Okay. Here we go. Oh, I hate Christmas. Oh man, I hate Christmas. Oh man, I hate Christmas. It really irks me so.
You suck!
What was that? Hey
Nothing.
man, if you had seen the things I'd seen, you'd hate Christmas too. I used to have a good life. I had all sorts of money and I had all sorts of friends. But then they just left me. You know why? Because they care about things like love and family and friends, and man, I just wants the money. And so I say it again. Oh, I hate Christmas. Oh, I hate Christmas. Oh, I said, oh, I hate Christmas. It really annoys me so.
About 11 of the people in the audience are toe tapping at this point, shaking their heads. One man, disgruntled, stands up. I'd rather spend this Christmas with my ex-wife's family. I'm out of here. And he stumbles off into the darkness. 2 cigarettes in his hand.
Where you going, man? Fine. You go try to find your holiday joy with wherever you want to go. You're not going to find it, man. It's only in the filthy lucre that you will find the joy you are seeking. But then suddenly,
the song ends. And Scrooge says, all right, it's time for a set break. And he goes back into his dressing room, which is really just the alleyway behind the dive bar.
I'm going out to the back alley, guys. I'll see you in a little bit. I got to go nurture my humbugginess. Going out to the back alley.
Going out.
And then,
And
oh my
garbage
goodness.
cans get knocked over.
There's an ethereal, mysterious, bright light. Suddenly, I'm from Georgia. I am no longer. I am no longer
Thinking that. I'm
the mysterious light has actually transported me to a different timeline where I've come from a different part of the country. Oh, I gotta remember
Hey,
that
man.
I hate
Man.
Christmas, man.
Dude,
Who is this specter in front of me?
you don't remember me? Dude,
No,
it's Marley, dude. We be
Marley, my
jamming.
man. No, say it ain't so, Marley.
It's Marley. You remember
You died
me?
a long time ago.
I did, and I'm back to help you.
Why? So, man, why are you back? Are you looking for more money from me? Because I got to tell you, man,
I have
my
no
money
use
is
for
my
money.
own.
You don't remember what happened, do you? I died.
I don't.
I died trying to help set up your musical review show.
You know, I wondered where you had gone
forgot.
to. I forgot about the whole death thing. Yeah, I remember that now, man.
Funny you should bring up the death thing, man, because it's coming for you too. Bruh.
What? I don't believe it. My money's going to keep
Change
me
your
alive forever.
ways. change your ways. I want to show you a vision.
Okay.
The scene changes to a mausoleum. There we see the body of E.B. Scrooge laid out. Not even no guitar in sight. No boots.
Man. This ain't cool.
They gave him a
Why are you
haircut.
showing me?
They gave him a haircut.
Why are you showing me this vision of a well-manicured dead Ebenezer Scrooge? Man, this is like
This
so...
is what lies before you if you do not change your ways, man.
No,
Not
man,
groovy.
no. What can I do to change my ways? That this is not... Is this future set in stone? Is it certain? Or is there a way, man, that I can change it?
There is a way. There is a way. It starts tonight on this hallowed eve. You must sing songs of love, peace, harmony.
I'm going to go back inside now, and I'm going to change my ways. Suddenly, the vision disappears, and Scrooge runs back into the bar, takes up the stool, and sings a very different song, though strangely similar to what before, as if he couldn't actually
pressure,
play very
Daniel.
many chords.
No pressure.
Oh, I love Christmas. Oh, I love Christmas. Hey, man. Oh, I love Christmas. It fills my heart with joy, though that doesn't really rhyme, but that's okay because we're just going to sing about love for each other. Oh, I love you so because you are my bro and my sister too and my significant friend.
Suddenly, it's as if the audience is transformed. They huddle up and put arms around each other. They too start moving and jamming and singing. And they sing a little song like this.
Now, everybody, sing along and let's clap along too, shall we? We
Well, clap it
love Christmas and love
Christmas.
and peace and joy and
Love and
everybody.
Christmas, yo.
and everybody. I think we should end with a clap. You ready?
What?
1, 2, 3, man. Now clap.
Yay! Okay, that was pretty weird.
That was so horrible. That was great. That was great and horrible.
But I tried to do the audience singing. I meant the audience were joining you, but then you just watched me sing. You just left me out there.
Sorry.
Well, you didn't know. Like that was in my mind, the picture that either you knew or either you didn't know and you didn't. Right? I mean, how could you? Or you knew and you just wanted to watch me squirm.
I did not. I won't say. I won't say which one it was. I
And we
I
all
think
joined
we should,
together. Go ahead, Kevin.
I think we should praise our listeners because at this point you're either just joining us or you have endured the skit. If you're just joining us, you're such a wise audience for skipping over the skit. If you have endured the skit, you're such a gracious audience for having endured the skit. But either way, our listeners, we are
That's right.
grateful for your
We are.
for being with us. Sorry.
It's
You know,
like
surprise
Saturday
little.
Night Live meets Whose Line Is It Anyway? With no planning, writers, or budget.
Exactly. It may come as a surprise to our listeners, but we actually had not practiced that at all.
It's stunning.
No, thank you for listening, everybody.
Yes,
that we
thank you.
appreciate your putting up with our silliness. So Kevin, you had the great idea for today's episode, our first edition of the Board Game Faith Audio Video Club. So would you mind just telling us a little bit about your thoughts for today's episode? Where are we coming from?
Yeah, so YouTube is such an interesting playground, and at some point this video popped up kind of randomly. You may know you can turn on or off that autoplay feature. So I think this somehow, I usually leave autoplay off, but this video, somehow I got turned back on or toggled back on. This video was sort of playing, and I let it play, and then at a certain point, I was doing something else, I don't remember. some sort of email or terrible thing like that. And the video, I got pulled in because I found it so interesting. This is from the Dice Tower, which is a major YouTube network. Videos about board games. So they do all sorts of top 10 reviews, and they're very well known. And they had as a guest the wonderful Rodney Smith, who runs a separate YouTube channel called Watch It Played. So they had Rodney
Also about
Smith
board games.
on. Yes, also about board games. Yeah, so these are, it's kind of like NBC and ABC Sports getting together to discuss ice hockey, which I think is a sport that involves a net and a puck and trying to get high points.
I think that's right, and I think also there's a broom.
There's a broom involved. Yes, yeah. So we have these two like different YouTube schools of, I shouldn't say schools, but two different studios kind of on YouTube, home studios, and they are discussing the enemies of gaming. And on there is Tom Vassell and Z Garcia of the Dice Tower, and then Rodney Smith. And it was just so much fun to watch them together and sort of tease each other and play along and rip on Rodney some, because he's sort of a giant in the how-to video world. You can go back and watch videos he made like 15 years ago with his kid in the basement. I think it's the same basement almost. They just keep updating it.
I didn't know that.
It's pretty neat. I remember watching some of his older videos.
He really, just to second that, the Dice Tower is a great YouTube network, certainly responsible in my life for getting me into the hobby a lot more than what I was. But Rodney Smith, his channel, Watch It Played, and he also has other correspondents as well. Certainly, you're right. I mean, just kind of such an extraordinary resource for learning games. There was a father and son in our church board game group just a week or two ago. They were really interested in learning playing Pandemic, the board game. Actually, thanks to you, Kevin, because they had heard you talking about it on the podcast and how much it meant to you. And that was what I recommended to them. I said, hey, there's this, check out this Rodney Smith video on Watch It Played on how to play Pandemic, and it's a great way to learn that game and so many other games as well. So both of those YouTube channels are really great.
That's my favorite way to learn is Rodney Smith or a different channel, because I don't know, manuals are tricky for me to read, and I get, what is this component? And you're shuffling to find things. And if there's a video, they demonstrate visually, and it's pretty great. So the Dice Tower is known for having lists, and this video is a top 10 list about enemies of board gaming. So enemies of the hobby of hobby board gaming. And so they did a top 10 list. There's 3 of them. So they really had 30 items that they listed, but, and famously, they don't know what each other are going to list. So there was some crossover. So I thought I'd give you a top 5 list, highlights of their top 30 list. Does that make sense? We're going meta, people. And it's not a VR headset. This is a list of a list. And so the top 5 of the top 10, which is really a top 30 of enemies, challenges to board gaming.
Almost like maybe almost like spiritual dangers, we might say here on our podcast, maybe.
I think that's how we want to frame it. So, and that's what struck me is that they get into that, and it's somewhat unintentionally, that they do list all sorts of things like bad manuals or finding time. So some of them they have a much more wide range, but at this podcast, we want to focus on things that help us make sense of ourselves spiritually, whatever that means. That's a broad statement, but.
And Kevin, I'm sure if people want to actually watch the entire video, I'm sure there'll be a link to that in our show notes as well.
Good point. Yeah, there will be a link down below. Of course, you can always just search YouTube, Enemies of Gaming, I imagine, but we'll have a concrete list down below and encourage you to watch it. Cool. So here we are, my top 5 list. Ready? Number 5, finding other gamers, committed gamers, or common schedules. Has this been a challenge for you, Daniel, to create a gaming group?
Yeah, it certainly has. That's a great insight from them. The challenge of getting to find other people to play games with you. I'm blessed with a very patient, wonderful family. And, so when I was first getting into this hobby, probably about 6 years ago now, Kristen, I'm Kristen's husband, and our kids would very kindly play some games with me, but after a while, it wasn't their thing like it was my thing. And they kind of, it's not fair to them, ask them all the time, hey, you want to play another game tonight, and so I think I came up against that question, I think like a lot of gamers do pretty early on, well, how can I find others interested? I'm grateful that my job is such that I was kind of able to use my job to find others. Mm-hmm. As listeners to this podcast have known, we're both pastors, and I at the last few churches I've been at over the last 6 years, I have started board game groups in the churches, selfishly to get folks to play board games with me. But then there have been some really nice added benefits, I think, to the larger church and the larger congregation that we'll talk about in some other episode. But
yeah, that's a planned episode for 2023. Is how you.
How about you? Has that been a challenge for you?
It definitely has, and I had a similar journey of getting excited and sort of roping family in. And at first they were okay with it, and they went with some of the games. And this gets into some of the later parts of this list is trying to walk that line of inviting people but not strong-arming them, because it's real easy to sort of push people to play games that maybe they don't quite want to play. And sometimes someone will like a game that they do have to be strongly encouraged. So there is a little bit of a place of a light push, but there's also a place of not expecting or guilt tripping or just being okay with letting someone pick a different game than you want. Because if you're really into games like you and I are, we want to play the hot new thing. So my wife, Jenny, has a comment about, I'm learning a new game. That means I'll never play this game again, because then I'll just want to try a different game. Because I enjoy learning the mechanisms and seeing how it works. And she doesn't share that. She likes the game, but she also is not into learning the new game. So finding other gamers that are like you, that want to play similar things, and finding schedules is really hard, especially if they have families and kids doing swim team and other stuff or whatever.
Absolutely. And I think that relates to a couple other kind of adjacent matters as well. I think one is, folks are wired, we're all wired differently in different ways, of course. I think there are some people who find joy in learning new rules, who just who love that process of, I suspect you and I are probably saying that both that way. I love opening up a new manual, reading instructions, learning rules. And there are others, their joy is not in learning new rules. Their joy is after having learned the new rules, then seeing what that space has to offer. Mm-hmm. And, I hear that sometimes from others that, for them, the worst part is learning a new game, and they just want to play games that they know already, because that's where the real joy comes from. Spending time with a game you already know. And the other thing it brings me up is just, I think we have maybe an episode about this next year too. It brings up issues of solo gaming. So a lot of board games are made with solo modes these days. And I think we have an episode planned next year for like spiritual benefits of solo gaming. But that's just that is one way that sometimes people, at least partially, address some of these issues. If trying to, if you can't find someone to play with, there are a lot of good games out there with solo modes as well.
Yeah, and you really want the really chunky brain burner type game. Maybe that's a solo game. And then if you want the chunky brain burner social type experience, then you go to a board game store, or you look on the internet, or you just slowly try to introduce or find people that have that same bent. But as you're saying, not everybody has that. Some people, the minute you discuss a new game, they just wilt or they get tired. And knowing and respecting those boundaries, and by wanting to grow the hobby and bring in new board gamers, we've got to recognize people for who they are.
Yeah.
And what floats their boat, which may be something different.
Yep.
So a real challenge in many people, and I see this there's some Reddit forums and others that they buy games that they can't ever play because they don't have a group. And then other people have developed a group that has stood the test of time. So it is tricky. There's not one single answer. But a house of worship is a starting place, and a board game store.
Yeah.
There are places to start.
One other related matter that I just forgot about, I'm sorry, to this point about finding other gamers that Rodney Smith made in this video is just the importance of representation, both in games and in game groups. And I think that's just such a great point, that the more you can make games and game groups diverse in their representation, the more that really is just good for everybody. The more people can see themselves in games or see themselves in a group, the more welcoming that is to people.
That's right.
And so why it's important to seek a diversity of representation in all things, because it's just an act of welcome and hospitality. Yeah.
Yes, we're all drawn to characters and people and images that are like us. That's just, I think, hardwired. And which doesn't mean we can't appreciate people that are very different from us. In depictions, but having various imagery and storylines are going to bring in different people, attract different people. And so part of this is observation. What do people get into? It's also what the game is like. Some people love a good alpha gamer, roll the dice, smash and grab, laugh, right? Sort of a very combative style. Other people want a Euro type style. So knowing what people like and learning to play those different games and adjusting your own taste to maybe what your group wants. Because is it better to get to play a game maybe you don't want to play, or not playing any games?
Right, exactly.
The hard truth is sometimes you're going to have to let go of your own ego for what you want. Or as you said, save that for a solo game.
Yeah.
Or a different group, having multiple groups. So number 5, it's much trickier. And that's it's trickier than it's seems on up front, and especially probably today we find board games through the internet, and so it kind of starts out somewhat of a solo adventure. I dare say, like we find it on YouTube or we find something at Target and we buy a game and we get into it, so it tends to start solo, and then we end up looking for others that have the same taste. And some people just don't like board games at all. They just wilt.
Yeah, and like you said, I think we'll be getting into that later on the list too. But it's an excellent point. It's an excellent point.
It is. Just number 4. If I get the energy, I should do some cool.
Number 4. Number 4, man.
Number 4 is FOMO,
which is
fear of missing out. How's this play out, Daniel?
Yeah, I think, the fear of missing out is certainly a phenomenon that exists not just in the board game hobby. I think most of us in the Western world, I think, are driven to some extent by the fear of missing out. I'm not an economist, but I think partially kind of our the system of the consumerism economy that holds us all together in the Western world is built on fear of missing out. It's not so much things that we actually need, but we just want things that everyone else has. It's what consumerism is largely built on. I'm not saying that's good, but it is what it is, right? And so so fear of missing out in board games is certainly a reality. This is where you hear about this hot new board game. You discover that your friend has this awesome new game, and it's like, I really want this game, right? And so you're always kind of wanting to get more and more and more. One of the things that Tom Vassell mentioned on that video was a turning point in his life when he realized, in his board game life, when he realized that his collection was more about the number of board games he had versus like whether he actually had good games that he enjoyed. And I thought that was a really good way to frame it. This idea that is it about the number of games? So I could say, I've got 6,000 board games, and and most of them I've really never played or never will play. Or is it more about, I think I've got maybe 100 games or so, 150 out of it, but these are all games that I really love, and I really, and they give me a lot of joy, and so is it, I thought that was a helpful distinction. Is it more about kind of the bragging rights for the number, or is it about something else? Is it about having games that bring joy in life to you and your loved ones? Yeah. How about you? Do you struggle with fear of missing out?
Absolutely. And it's so hard because the Dice Tower itself and Board Game Geek, which is a very popular website, they all push hot new games. And it's in their interest to do that because they need something to talk about. And it gets people excited about board games. The system doesn't really work if we just keep playing the same old games over and over. So that doesn't bring new creators in. It doesn't give them something to preview and discuss. The problem is it does encourage us to think, oh, if I don't get this game, I'm going to miss out.
Yeah.
And it works with Kickstarter, which is what funds often a lot of board games. And it builds this excitement. I had a weird experience with this recently. I just kickstarted a few games I guess it was last year. And there's a lot of buzz around one called ISS Vanguard. And they started releasing it. I'm like, this is cool. I finally get to see it happen. What I did not realize is that somehow when I backed it, I didn't pay for Wave 1 shipping or something. So I've got a whole nother year to wait on the game.
No way. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, I didn't either. There was something about the shipping. I don't quite remember it. But I have been almost checking the front porch and excited, starting to watch videos. And I just thought, okay, here's a lesson here. And they didn't do anything wrong. It was all in there. Well, I will say they did this one thing wrong. When I signed up a year ago, it said that at the bottom. But in a year, I'd forgotten. So it'd been nice to get a little reminder of, hey, you're a Wave 2. We know you're excited. Just give it a year.
Interesting.
But it was a lesson that sometimes that fear of missing out, I don't know. You watch these things, you want to get behind it, but the truth is it's back order. You're not going to get it. It's much more fun to go to the board game store, find a game you're excited about, buy it, bring it home.
Yeah.
Versus the whole internet mania where you don't feel like you're spending money because you put it on Kickstarter credit card and then you kind of forget about it. I don't know. There's definitely a fear of missing out on experiences or a collection because board games are art, but it's a strange kind of art because it's art we play. So do you want it pristine, or in some ways, it's the more worn it is, the more loved it's been. Kind of like a Bible.
Like a good stuffed animal.
Christians. Yeah, a good stuffed animal, or like your Bible. Should the Bible be in great shape, or should it be messed up and even have notes written in it and things underlined?
It reminds me of. I'm sorry, Kevin. Did I interrupt you? Are you wanting to?
You did not.
Okay, all right. It reminds me of something we've talked about before. What mathematicians talk about. In terms for algorithms, in terms of exploit versus explore, and both of those are kind of very cold, sterile words, and they maybe, and I don't think they have to be. But this idea of in mathematics and algorithms and this idea between exploit versus explore is we only have a limited amount of energy. So what are we going to do? Are we going to spend it constantly exploring? In other words, finding new things, or are we going to exploit, which sounds like a horrible word, but mathematically what it means is enjoying the things you already have, enjoying the things you already know. And it seems to me like in terms of kind of spirituality, there's some lessons about just growing in love in that too. That I think if there is undeniably a certain kind of, a thrill and value of, going through life, wanting to explore new things, try new things, meet new people, all of that. But I also think there is a kind of depth of love that only comes with saying, I'm going to stick by these people and these things that have been in my life from the beginning. You know what I mean? Or just kind of, and sometimes those are unhealthy relationships and we need to get out and all that stuff. I'm not saying there are always caveats and exceptions. I'm not saying sticking within, somebody who's abusive or hurtful or things like that. But there's certain kinds of lessons of love and depths of love that only come, I think, with the side that says, let's stick with this over years and generations and decades, and I
Yes.
think there's something to that. I find that in board games too, that every now and then I'll go back to like an old board game that I've had for a long time, and it's like, oh, I forgot how much I love this. I forgot, what, and I'll discover a new depth of interest in this game, or coolness about this game or mechanism that I wouldn't have discovered if I only played it one or two times and then set it aside. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, that's just another thought.
Yeah, no, definitely. Less is more, which is a message of the ancient Epicureans and Stoics, and finding joy in less. The more games you own, the more mental weight, the more Kallax bookshelves, the more money. There's all sorts of problems with buying games, and then you have to track them, and you probably need a system of getting rid of some at some point. So then you have to decide which ones to get rid of. In some ways, you'll be very happy just getting a couple of really good games and sticking with it. But if you love the thrill of the new, if you love unwrapping, if you love new mechanisms, I think that's totally fine. You just want to try to find a balance. And again, by supporting this, we encourage more people to come in. They need us to buy their games. Otherwise, I mean, they got to buy shoes too. Like they can't.
Yeah.
This system does, nothing is free, and so we do want to support our stores and buy games, but we want to stay in budget, and we want to be. I don't know. It's very tricky because I want to be rational, but a lot of this is not rational. It's very irrational. It's like, I'm going to get this game right now, and then it's so much fun. And then later I have that memory of, remember when we bought this game? And then we didn't even know what it was, and it was fun. And then it sits on my shelf, and I get that memory. I love that.
Yeah. No, you're right. There's nothing wrong with either. I think you're right. I think just kind of realizing there's value in both, and both are needed, and there's a balance in both. I mean, having just said all the stuff about the importance of rediscovering our old games, we're getting ready to. We're both out of the Christian tradition. We're getting ready to celebrate Christmas here in our household. And honestly, when my dear wife Kristen asked me what I wanted for Christmas, I gave her a list of new games that I would love to have. Exactly. So I am certainly as much in the category of wanting new games as anybody. So
because Jesus was born on this earth to ensure that we get more games.
That's right. What better way of celebrating the birth of our Savior than
getting new games?
That's right.
But while you're at there are some games. I want to know what's on your list, but I'm afraid it'll get us off track. But I'm very curious.
Well, how about offline? I want to hear yours
response. Too. What do you think's on Daniel's list? Besides replacing Arc Nova, which I stole from him.
Is that where it went? I've wondered where it was. I wondered what that massive box was under your shirt when you were leaving. I thought it was
exactly. It's not a sin because I confessed it to a priest, although I'm not Catholic, so I don't think it worked. But I tried, and I feel better about it because
I think that's what counts.
The priest said it was
what counts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it counts. Just feel better. I did not steal this game. But it was cool. It was cool. But now here's the weird bit for me. I still want to buy it, but part of it, I wanted to learn about it, and now I've already played it. So now it's in a weird category of my mind of it's not exactly new.
Yeah. Yes. I've encountered that before too.
It's so strange.
Yes.
But that's good. That's good because maybe I don't need to buy it.
Yep. Sometimes if I learn someone else to play a game on someone else's copy, suddenly it's not quite as appealing to me anymore. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
What is the human mind? Number 3, the social contract. Rodney Smith kept going back to this. And it's so interesting. He's getting on this idea, I think, of just being aware of it's both manners and also that you've kind of entered a situation where you need to respect others' abilities and general etiquette manners of not complaining that you lose all the time, even though I did that earlier in the episode. But not being a sore loser, not crushing people. If you're much better at a game, just, being better at a game is often you just have more experience with it. That's not a fair reason to crush people in a game just based on your experience. Especially if they're new to the game, the first time you play it is just, you don't know what's going on. Right. So trying to respect the game, respect the other people at the table, not be distracted by cell phones, not too impatient, not too keen on winning, but not too worried about looking stupid and losing, which I think is a great spiritual gift of board games. Can
Yeah.
you lose and admit you lost and you messed up? And also, it's just a game. Like, I
Right.
think it's such a valuable lesson because
Right.
sometimes our anxieties and fears are about something that hasn't happened. And
Yeah.
one way to deal with that is to actually have it happen and realize you survived.
Yep. Yep. No one laughed at you for losing the game, or you're
Right.
not a horrible person for losing the
You're not a
game.
horrible person.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
No one's
So that's
questioning your intelligence or your, yeah, yeah,
mm-mm,
yeah.
no, no. Or you can be super intelligent and you just missed something. Like it was a
Exactly.
matter of attention. And it also may mean that you took a respectable amount of time on your turn. They brought this up a lot on the list, which is people that take too long on their turns. So that can be a spiritual danger that you don't want to make a mistake. You have to win. You have to be 100% sure about your moves.
Yeah.
That is creating an atmosphere where people are really bored or frustrated. So you take
Right.
your move and maybe you messed up. Maybe you lost the game. If it's a Euro game, you lost the game in round 10 of 20.
Right. Right.
That's all it takes. And that's one
Right.
reason why I don't hate, but I love Euro games, but they frustrate me because there's often no coming back.
And Euro
One or
games, Kevin,
two
for those
Yeah.
listeners who might not be familiar with Euro games, when
They
we
tend to
say
be
Euro games,
based, yeah, they're based more on resource management.
yeah, it's less about eliminating your competition and more about, yeah, just
It's less luck and less about the competition. It's more about taking very effective moves. And so if you
yeah,
overpay for something early on in the game, you won't have the resources later to do things. So it's very much a question of timing.
yeah,
And it tends to cascade. They're great, but they can be very frustrating. It's often a lot to keep in your head.
yeah,
And accepting the fact that you've probably already lost the game, but just keep playing just to see what
yeah,
happens,
yeah.
or maybe others will equally mess up. But the mistake is wanting to take perfect turns, and then it's not fun because you are taking twice as long as everyone else. So part of the social
Right.
contract is, am I taking my turns in line with everyone else?
Yeah. That phenomenon of taking too long is sometimes referred to in the hobby as analysis paralysis. If everyone
Yes,
hears
that's right. AP,
hears that, or
analysis
AP,
paralysis.
yeah, everyone hears that.
Which everyone
But no,
will feel at some point, especially a new game. It's very normal. But if you get it, then you're just like, I'll just do this. Let's see what happens.
Right,
It's
yeah.
just a game.
Yeah,
It's just
what's the worst
smart.
could happen? I'll lose. That's okay.
I'll lose.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
lose. And then guess what? I'm gonna eat pizza. Like everyone
That's
gets
right.
pizza at the end. It doesn't matter.
that's right. And then the next time I play this game, I'll know a little bit more about it. And yeah, I think that's an excellent point. It reminds me a little bit of what we talked about in episode 9 for our listeners. If you want to go back and listen, it's called "Is Winning the Point." And I think one of the things we discussed in that episode is that I think it's kind of is winning as a means or winning as an end.
Right.
As an like, and I think sometimes we get ourselves in trouble when we confuse means and ends in games and in life too. But I think it's coming to see winning in a game not as the end of the game, not as the goal of the game, but as the means to make the game happen. Right? That for and we talked about this again in episode 9. But the for a game to work, we have to try to win.
Yes.
But that's not the goal of the game, right? The goal of the game is something bigger and greater and more beautiful than that. It's to spend time with people. It's to have fun with this beautiful little piece of art in front of us. It's to engage in, and to think creatively about problems. Winning the end or is winning the means. And
Right.
and I think the point of what a lot of people say is winning is the structure you have to have for a game to hold together. But ultimately, it's not the point of the game. Is that kind of
correct?
No,
No, that's absolutely right.
Yeah,
and yes, that there's this weird irony that for the game to work, we have to try to win. But yeah, it has to be a balancing act, and it's more about the experience of playing.
Right.
And nobody. Yeah, and creating an atmosphere either of fear that you're not going to win or that you always have to win. Those are not conducive to the game. There's a great bit in the video, Z Garcia in the video, the YouTube video. He's like, "Hey, if you really want to play a game and win, just sit in the corner with a D6, a six-sided die, and roll it. And if it's 1 to 3, you win, and if it's 4 to 6, you lose."
Yeah.
Like if you just want to play a game and win it, you can just sit in the corner and roll dice. So the point of this game is not just to win; it's to create something magical with others.
Exactly.
And it's exciting for someone to win, and it's exciting to see others get better at it and eventually win, which over time will. So when you and I played Art Nova, I expected you to win, and you did win, and I expected to lose, but you helped me learn it. And a few times I had analysis paralysis, and I said, "What should I do?" And you gave me helpful advice. You did not tell me what to do unless I asked for it, as I recall.
Oh.
Like you let me make my own choices, but a few times I was like, I'm not sure what I should. And you kind of like, well, you could do this, and then I would just do it because I was still learning the game.
Sure.
And I had a great time, and what made it good is I had a few great moves, and I was like, this was cool. I still lost, which is fine. Somebody's got to lose, but there are a few moments where something. I had some good moments. That's one nice thing with the Euro game is you'll hopefully always have some moments in it where you feel like, good job.
Yeah.
And also I just got to see what a great game it is. So you taught me that. And I was like,
I love seeing your delight in that game. You were like every other move. You were like, oh, this is such a great game. And I agree.
It's like a watch. I saw the cogs, how they fit together. Yeah.
It's
a great game. Now I got to go buy it.
I know.
It's the theme. I just love space, and I love all that kind of esoteric Star Wars type stuff, and it's the theme that I think holds me back.
Oh, you mean in terms of buying,
like the only reason
the theme of a zoo and animals doesn't appeal to you, is what you're saying.
Well, it doesn't. I mean, it's fine. I like it. I just think if it had aliens on it, I would have probably bought 2 copies already.
Yeah. What if it's like a space zoo?
Oh, a space zoo with aliens and laser guns and robots and an AI. It's just stupid. It's just packaging. But yeah, that's.
I would go to a space zoo. Maybe that could be the sequel. Or Ark Nova in space. Ark Nova in space. Right. I wonder. Not to spend too much time on this point either, but I wonder. This thing about winning and focus on winning, and winning is means and ends and things like that. It just makes me wonder, and we can't figure it all out right now, of course, but it just makes me wonder kind of what spiritual implications or lessons there are for that too. Just just in larger life too. Just kind of this, a posture of. I don't know. For life to work, for society to work, we all have to try our best. That's kind of doing our best as a means versus feeling like the point of life is to be the best. Then that's making that kind of the ends. I don't know. Anyway, I haven't really thought through all of that, but I just wonder what spiritual parallels there are to that lesson from games, that winning is a means and not an end.
No, I think you're quite right, and it makes me think how we want to have the best life possible, but ultimately you are going to die. We're all going to die. So right. it kind of keeps it in check, the whole idea of this life is a means to an end.
Yeah.
Like we should hopefully maximize joy and make the most of it, but the end doesn't change. Yeah. Which is mortality. And I know that's grim, but it also makes life sweet, and of course it's just we can't deny it. I mean that would be worse. So it simply is the world, the way the world is. It reminds me of our friend Ali Karar's comment that in the Quran it describes how life is a game. This world is a game, and I think that's a very healthy, interesting way to think of it. Yeah.
I love that. I love that too. I was so grateful for him.
No, that's really haunted me, and he's going to be back, and we're excited. I'm excited to hear from Ali again.
Yes.
Yes, that's number 3. Number 2, and number 3, they include some bits, the social contract of respecting other people's property. They get into some funny bits about eating at the table and not tearing up cards and things like that. Yes. But number 2 is an interesting complement to number 3, which is social tolerance. So despite the contract that we're under, which is we should be mannered and take our turn and try not to be on our cell phone and try to win, there's a bit of we need some cushion and some grace, because number 3 can be cruel and unfair, because there may be something going on in your life and you do need to check your cell phone or respond to it. Or maybe you're really tired and you're going to take longer turns. So this was the great line, Rodney Smith, I even wrote it down. He said, the gift of this hobby is to learn to be better people.
Yeah.
And we learn better people by balancing law and grace, or social contract and respect, along with forgiveness. And it's about and mercy as well. And he comments that video games don't do this. I never thought about that. But video games, you can always find someone else to play online, or you can just be whatever person you want. But when you sit at a table with other people in a board game, not a video game, but when you're at a board game, you really has to be some grace there.
Yeah, yeah. You're in the physical, embodied presence of another person. Yeah, this is one of the first things you mentioned about this video and why it meant so much to you. That quote from Ronnie Smith about this hobby at its best helps us to learn to be better people. And I just think that's such a great insight. That is the gift of that's said so well. Just this idea that if games are practice at life skills, maybe the ultimate practice that games give us is the practice of how to live gracefully with each other. And how to be with each other. And be present to each other. Yeah. I love that.
Right. It too. Yeah, I love it too. That we want our games to be in good shape. People respect it, but we also have to live with the fact that it's just a game, and people matter more than games. Which I know is crazy talk, but from a gamer.
What?
But, what?
I think that's another podcast. I think that's the people are more important than games podcast.
Yep.
Here.
And then the number one interesting comment that several of the people in the video had was the biggest obstacle to board gaming is board gamers. Mm-hmm. It's actually ourselves. Mm-hmm. When we are too impatient, we're too controlling, we force others to play the games that we like and not that they like. The fact that not everyone is a gamer. So we got into this a little bit earlier, but just being self-aware of who we are and what we expect, and expectations. Our expectations get in the way as well. That we expect that perfect game or perfect game experience, or recreating a perfect game experience. And strangely, that's an example of where the perfect becomes the enemy of the good, that we are so focused on some kind of magical experience that we can't just enjoy games. So Rodney Smith gave an example early on of being at a board game convention and looking for the right game to match his mood. And he only got to play one game that day, but a friend of his just played whatever game was in front of him, and he played like 10 new games. So again, the perfect's the enemy of the good, where we have expectations or just who we are ends up preventing ourselves from enjoying games, which is the whole reason we're into it. That we want our games to be in sleeves, or we have to have the right collection, or we have to have instead of just enjoying it. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I love that idea of the perfect is the enemy of the good. I hadn't thought of it in those terms. That's so well said. Yeah. No, and another aspect of that especially spoke to me, that idea of enemy of gaming is gamers or danger, is that sense also of, as you were saying, of us feeling like that everyone has to be like us too, like in terms of in terms of gaming. That was a point they made that especially I think kind of spoke to me. There's a quote I heard somewhere that I tell people jokingly. I mean, but it's horrible. But I say it as a joke, but it is a horrible thing, which is somebody will come to me and they'll say, "Oh, Daniel, I just don't like games. I don't like board games. It's not me." And I don't really believe this, but my response sometimes has been to share this quote, which is, well, there are two types of people in the world. those who love board games and those who haven't found the right board game yet.
Right,
you know, and,
right.
And on the one hand, ha ha ha, you know, that's funny. But on the other hand, that's kind of a not a very nice thing for me to say. You know, I mean, I need to give people the grace to not like games. Now,
Right.
I do believe, as we talked about earlier in this podcast, if we're looking at a larger issue of playfulness, I do feel like playfulness is an essential part of life, no matter who we are, and we all need to find ways to express that playfulness, and part of who God made us to be, and for a lot of people that can be in the form of games, board games, or it could be games defined in a much broader sense. You know, games of just being silly or pretending or doing silly dances or doing a skit about, you know, Ebenezer Scrooge and Marley or you know, it can be broadly defined, but it's really unfair to say, essentially I'm saying you have to be like me, you know. And that really spoke to me. There's nothing attractive in that. There's nothing fair to the other person in that, because I wouldn't want to be treated that way.
Then you bring in guilt or shame or something, and it's nothing wrong with not liking board games. In fact,
exactly.
And so we've got
let
some
the other
friends
person.
We've got some friends that when they get together, they just want to chit chat. They want to chew the fat, and I like that for a bit, but because of my own wiring, after a while, I get fidgety, and I'll end up cleaning up the kitchen because I need to do something. I'd rather be playing a game. I like to chit chat and chew the fat and just sort of have a meandering conversation for a bit, but I'm focused in a way that they're not like it's not right or wrong. It's just different. That's their safe space.
Right.
Is sort of a unboundaried, flowing, spending time with others. I, for whatever reason, like more boundaried. Like, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And recognizing that as a basic element, which I think is, to your point, why some people don't like board games. They do need play. I totally agree with that. Everyone needs play in their life. But it may be a board game is not the right kind of play.
Right. And recognizing how you're right, that your own boundaries and their own boundaries, and like you said, you may not be wired in this way of sitting around and talking about it, and that's fine. And they may be wired in the way of sitting around and talking, and that's fine. You know, one isn't better than the other. It's just how we're wired. You know, it reminds me also of a conversation that I think religious communities have always had. Many religious communities. I realize this is more a part of some religious traditions than others, but you know, the conversation of how do we make our religion, whatever it is, attractive to other people. You know, and I think in the Christian circles, this is maybe talk about issues of evangelism. You know, but that's a specifically Christian word, but it's a question that a lot of religious traditions talk about is how can we make our religion attractive to other people, or proselytizing is maybe a negative way of talking about it. But you know, I think, and our listeners might feel differently, and that's fine. And please feel free to say if you disagree. I want to hear it, and you might think differently too, Kevin. But I think sometimes it's an issue of what ultimately is more attractive to a person. Is it saying, you really have to be like me, ultimately, for this to work? Or is it saying, you know what, you're not like me, and I love you for it, and you're, and I think, in my mind, ultimately, what's more attractive is that second option. If someone, because if I flip it around, and I think about if someone comes to me and says, it gives me those two options. If someone says to me, you got to be like me, Daniel, or if someone comes to me and says, Daniel, you don't have to be like me, and you're awesome just the way you are, I would find that second option much more attractive, and I'd be much more interested in that person's life and their worldview and things like that. And so,
sure.
I think the same is true. That conversation we have in religious traditions sometimes, I think, also applies to board games. I would be much more interested in a board gamer who lets me be me than a board gamer who says you have to be. You don't be yourself. Be like me. That would just turn me off.
No, I totally agree with you, and that is absolutely where I fall. I would create a space where there is a place to invite people to say, hey, why don't you try this game with me, see what you think? Or, hey, if you don't have a church back place to worship, come visit our church and see see if it works for you. But you got to give space for someone to say no in the moment, or also down the road to say this isn't for me. And again, some people are just never gonna. They're just not religious, and I don't think they're ever gonna be. Yeah. And that some people may disagree with me, but you're never gonna get 100% of people, even if they're all the same religion. Not all of them's going to go to the same house of worship. It's just not going to happen. You're always going to have 10% that are going to stay home and mow the grass. And maybe that's like the 10% that don't like board games in terms of play. Yeah. They're just not going to go for it.
Now, I'm with you. I think you're right. I love that idea of, how can we still be invitational in a way that's not, as Z. Garcia said, Borg-like, saying like you have to conform to me.
You must do this.
Yeah, yeah. And you're right. I think in terms of religiosity, I think you're right as well. Like people, some folks just aren't going to find institutional religion of any sort kind of appealing because of whatever reason, context or background or how they're wired. I do think, I kind of contrast of what we were saying earlier with like games and play. Play may be an important part of everybody's life, but not games. I have sometimes this conversation with some dear folks in my life where I do think broadly defined, and I may be wrong, and Kevin, feel free to disagree with me too. I broadly defined, if we see kind of the religious impulses like, how am I connected, to the universe, to other people, to the, I think, that may be a part of we're all kind of trying to seek how we're connected, in ways, but you're right. I mean, I think for some people, they're not going to find that ever in the institutions, like we might say, if that makes sense. An institutional religion or
no, it makes sense.
I don't know. That makes,
and I wonder at times if
sense.
It's even larger that some people just can't be religious. But I'm not sure. But one essay I read, it was in sort of philosophy and religion, was being religious is almost like having a certain artistic taste. And so the example the guy gave is of a garden that seems to be abandoned, and two people view the garden very differently. One of them believes a gardener is coming at night and making it better, and the other one doesn't see that. And he's comparing that to a religious and non-religious viewpoint, that some people just are never going to see things that others see, and it's almost like an aesthetic sensibility. And I never thought of it that way, but I think there's a lot of truth. Some people just can never get modern art, and other people love it. And religion's probably more like appreciating. It's a worldview, obviously, but it's also a certain appreciation of a certain type of thinking and being that maybe some people just don't have. I don't know. I mean, religion's at the core of all human history and society. It goes back to our earliest days. We find evidence of religion. It's always been there, but I guess I wonder if there's always been 10% that just kind of moved rocks, or back in, I'm thinking of like cave dwellers, just like, I'm just going to move these rocks. I'm not going to offer animal sacrifices. Like, they just never got it. So I don't know. We've gotten real philosophical. But
these are great. Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. Well, this is a great conversation. I'd love to keep having it, but you're right. I know we've kind of come.
Yeah, no, I know I've gotten off track, but it does make. I have sort of thought, like, as you said, there are some people just never going to be institutional religion folks, and there are people that will switch. There's some people that were and weren't, or weren't and were. There's always room to move, but I also wonder if there's some people that just simply don't get religion.
Right. I guess what I wonder is, and I may be wrong on it, just as play is an important part of everyone's life, whether it's interpreted through games or not, whether there is something that is universal to everybody that's all about
connectedness.
That sense of connection, that interconnection to life, to the world around you, to people, that those of us in institutional religions might say, that's the religious impulse. They may not call it that, but whether that's still a universal impulse in everyone, just trying to think, how am I connected to things?
That's probably,
I don't know.
I think that's a debate that's probably unanswerable, but yes, that there is some kind of religious consciousness within us all.
But what we can all agree on is that Ark Nova is awesome.
Arc Nova's awesome, and animals are awesome, but animals with lasers are even better.
Even better in space. That's right.
We need space whales with lasers.
Oh,
yeah. So go ahead. No. What?
No, I just Adrian Adamescu, when he was our guest, he's making that game on flying whales. That might be that might be what we're talking about. Space whales.
Dude's got some sense.
Yeah.
He likes stained glass, churches, and space whales.
Space
Everything
whales.
I want. Space whales. So yeah, but back to this idea. Rodney Smith commented another great moment in the video. He says, "I come to this table as a flawed human being," and sort of that self-awareness, which is, I think, can be both religious and non-religious in terms of approaching a game. I mean, it applies to religion or just being at a board game table. We're all flawed human beings, and we just have to be honest about who we are and the things we want, but also that we may not get them.
Yeah.
I really wish I was playing Twilight Imperium now, but I'm not. So we're going to play this game instead.
I'm sorry.
I know.
I could try to pretend to be a space whale.
That'd be awesome.
That was my space
Except
whale
in
sound.
Space, no one can hear you.
It sounded like a beagle. That's right.
Space beagle, mute space beagles.
Well, and you had that. Did you want to share? I know you had a quote kind of related to that idea that Rodney Smith talked about, that we come as flawed human beings from the 13th century mystic.
I know we need to close on the episode, but this 13th century German mystic poet who wasn't actually a nun. Interestingly, I was looking her up again. She was in a lay religious group, so you think of her as a nun, but she wasn't one of the official nuns of the Middle Ages. But Mechthild of Magdeburg, German mystic poet, made the comment, "We should clothe ourselves with ourselves," which is a way of saying we need to be honest about who we are, our shortcomings and failings and flaws, and we should put those on the outside.
Yeah.
So that we're radically honest. So I think that's another way. It is so great. I love the imagery, because instead we clothe ourselves with trying to impress people, or trying to be what people want us to be, or the person we want to be, instead of just being ourselves.
Yeah.
And so Rodney Smith really, gets onto that with just admitting that we're all flawed human beings, and that's where we start at this table of life. The table of life.
That would make a great game.
That would be a great game. The table of life.
The table of life.
Yeah.
I'd kickstart it.
We'll get a copy in 2025. Wave 3.
But I got to make sure that to pay to be in the first wave of the.
They commented in the video. This is really dark. I never thought of this, but if you kickstart a lot of things and then you were to randomly die, and let's say you're married, your spouse then 2 years later gets all these kickstarted games delivered to your house. It's like, oh no, I never thought of that.
Right. That's true.
And then they're what am I going to do with? They've already cleaned out your closet, and now they're still getting your stuff. That's
right. Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. That's true. No, that's a great quote. Yes. Next episode. In 2 weeks. Yeah. Do you want to?
2 weeks.
You want to let our folks know, Kevin, or I can?
You do it.
Well, yes,
because I forgot to put in the notes.
That's fine. You.
You're
so listeners to this episode may have noticed that we are not talking about what we said we'd talk about originally, which was we were going to be welcoming back Ali Karar, who is a fantastic friend of this podcast, to talk about Muslim representation in board games, and also Jesus and Islam. And through circumstances outside of everyone's control, Ali was not able to be with us this episode. Not his fault. But he will be joining us next episode. So next episode, we will be having the joy of welcoming back our first return guest. And he was our very first guest, Ali Karar. Karar 2K on YouTube, a board game reviewer, to talk about Muslim representation in board games, and also the role of Jesus in Islam. Should be a great time. It'd just be great to welcome Ali back, and we hope that you can join us next time.
That's right. Until then.
Yeah. And then in the meantime, how can folks connect with us, Kevin?
Yeah, boardgamefaith.com. And they can find us on Instagram. We've got a pretty good group rocking along there. So that's Board Game Faith on Instagram. Discord, there's a link below if you want to directly interact with us. That's a great way to give us some show ideas or responses or thoughts. So we just appreciate hearing from you all.
Yep. You can email us at info@boardgamefaith.com as well. Info@boardgamefaith.com. And we do have a newsletter. If you want to stay in the loop, we'd love to have you join us in our newsletter. Just follow our link tree in any of our social media, and that will take you to a place where you can sign up for the newsletter.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. Well, I can't say Merry Christmas because we're going to get together next week. But happy holidays, and I'll see you, and we'll see you all and the listeners in, well, I guess it will be more than two. Wait, because it's next week that we talk to Ali, right?
Oh, you're right.
I'll cut a lot of this out.
At some point, you'll be hearing from us.
We'll see you in the coming. We'll probably not see you, but you'll hear us in 10 days.
Yeah, something like that.
Tune in on your radio.
Yeah.
To not see us.
Kevin,
don't see me.
At some point you'll hear from us. Thank you for your patience, listeners, as we navigate the holidays. So, Kevin, great hanging out with you, and listeners, those of you who are listening, thank you so much for spending a little bit of your day with us. It's an honor, a joy. We can't tell you how thankful we are for each of you, and you're an important part of this Board Game Faith family. And we hope that your life is and the weeks to come are filled with a lot of joy and love. And we're glad you're in the world.
That's right. Okay. Bye-bye, Daniel.
Bye, Kevin. Thanks. Bye-bye.